Route ledger, Western region. That line at the top of a file told investigators more than any confession could. It logged 182 monthly shipments across a corridor stitched into everyday commerce, from a cold storage pallets to modified floors and trucks. Today, we open the bribe pages beside the route pages. Monthly payments to highway officers and port inspectors, 3 officials who greenlit off-hour permits, and a pattern of unscanned border crossings. Watch how a warehouse in Bakersfield coordinated a continent-facing pipeline, and why it was built to restart within 60 days. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. $220,000. Transit chief. Under it, 3 initials that kept showing up on late-night permits. A signature shouldn't move product like a convoy, but this one did. Inside the Bakersfield command room, 2 monitors ran like twin clocks. On the left, routes and timing windows, carrier IDs, pallet contents, and departure slots. On the right, the bribe ledger. Names reduced to initials, payment tiers, and a grid of dates that matched the same windows. Every click lined up. A permit timestamp mirrored a green light on the route board, and the board mirrored a truck that left the yard without delays. Nothing flashy, just synchronized columns running a freight rhythm that looked like normal commerce. On paper, the carriers checked out. Licensed plates, bonded shipments, USDA stamps on perishable pallets, bills of lading that matched manifests down to the weight. The conflict lived between lines. Who arranged the open lane when a way station went quiet? Who nudged a truck from random inspection to expedited? Who let a dock crane sit idle just long enough to push a different load forward? The money explained the gaps. Highway officers took between $12,000 and $35,000 monthly tied to specific corridors and quiet hours that thinned patrol presence when it counted. Port inspectors saw $45,000 to $90,000 for off-manifest variances small enough to seem clerical. And the big lever, up to $220,000 a month attached to a transportation official who controlled off-hour permit windows, the kind that made clocks bend around a truck schedule. 3 local officials held the keys to those permits. Off-hour freight approvals did 2 things at once. They skipped daytime queues and slid trucks into low-traffic periods where scanners slowed or rotated staff. The signatures didn't stand alone. Investigators pulled internal calendar invites off encrypted drives, late-night blocks labeled with vague project codes that matched the initials under the $220,000 line. Each invite overlapped a permit time, and each permit aligned with a route board green light. The queue didn't vanish. It split, and these trucks chose the shorter line. The mechanism ran on microscheduling. Departure windows carved into 22-minute slots. Plates and carrier IDs pre-cleared against a whitelist so gate checks read as routine. Trucks stacked behind real produce carriers, hugging their schedules so thermal and manifest profiles looked typical. If a slot slipped 5 minutes, a follow-on truck advanced and the rest rippled forward. It looked like traffic. It was choreography. Money moved the same way, small and steady. Street gatekeepers took cash bundles that never hit a bank. Supervisors higher up saw hourly crypto drips instead of lump sums, a stream that faded as soon as a truck cleared the highway arc. By the time a shipment left the yard, the ledger showed completed blocks. 45 minutes later, balances were empty again, leaving only timestamps that matched the route board's ticks. A Tuesday at 3:40 captured the system cleanly. The permit posted at 23:12 the night before. The highway unit assigned to that corridor disappeared for training, which only meant fewer eyes on the ramp. A port inspector swap at 2:55 went in as maintenance, shifting the one person likely to flag a variance. At 3:39, the carrier ID pinged pre-cleared, and by 3:44, the truck rolled. No secondary, no hold, under 5 minutes door to road. Those amounts and rolls didn't just grease wheels, they made the corridor predictable. 12 to 35,000 kept corridors quiet, 45 to 90 covered variances, and 220 locked in the night window that pulled the whole chain tight. With lanes purchased and clocks aligned, The bottleneck left to bend sat past the flashing cones and thermal arches, where the scanners decided who stopped and who drove on. 12 agents. One instruction repeated. Secondary offline. Trucks rolled past the arch, paperwork stamped, no detour to deeper checks. How does a convoy move through a checkpoint while the machines that should catch it sit in the corner, powered on but unused? Here's how the lane is supposed to work. Primary runs a drive-through scan and a database check, looking for weight mismatches, odd density, or suspicious routing. Anything that pings goes to secondary. Secondary opens doors, probes pallets, runs higher resolution imaging, and pulls a longer history on the VIN, the carrier, and the driver. Randomization sits on top of both layers, so even clean passes get tapped for extra scrutiny. The system relies on rhythm: scan, route, inspect, clear. It can't be gamed if every gear turns. The internal messages pulled from the Reno server showed that gear turned only when someone allowed it. Shift change notes landed a few minutes before the top of the hour. The same phrasing repeated across weeks. The scanners never broke. They were flagged as unavailable. A badge would log in, the notes would post, and the status would flip to a maintenance label that didn't trigger alarms up the chain. The workaround lived in timing, not technology. They staged secondary as down for calibration, a label that moves without paperwork if it stays under a set time. With secondary sidelined, traffic overflowed to an auxiliary path marked for expedited perishables. That lane exists to keep produce from spoiling when queues stretch, so staff view it as a relief valve. The ledger aligned these windows with bribe cycles, locking the calibration notes to specific nights and narrow slots inside the graveyard shift. If a carrier ID matched the ledger's slot, the truck didn't wait for the all-clear. It entered the perishable lane and drove. Coordination never relied on direct orders in chat. The crew mapped encrypted phones to duty rosters. When a specific supervisor's credentials opened the shift, a script started a quiet metronome. 3 green lights per hour, then a pause to avoid the randomization trigger looking too neat. If a truck missed its mark, the metronome held until the next slot, and a decoy pass filled the lane to keep the flow normal. The only visible sign was steady movement through a gate labeled fast for food. A clean run on the record looks like this. 2 reefers and a flatbed, all tied to the route ledger. The reefers declare seafood and mixed produce, both temperature sensitive and common on that corridor. The flatbed lists farm equipment under a weight limit that rarely invites manual checks. A maintenance window hits, secondary posts, calibration, and the overflow lane carries all 3 through with primary-only scans. The devices recorded entries, but secondary never keyed in an inspection. ID. 5 minutes later, the ledger marked the batch complete. Investigators counted 213 encrypted devices tied to fabricated identities that matched shift periods, not real names. The finance side kept pace. $14.7 million moved over 6 weeks in small crypto increments, funding the status flips, the schedule bumps, and the orderly silence that followed. No single transfer looked bold. The drip carried the load. It lasted because it looked helpful. Decentralized favors meant no one needed to know the full chain. Players rotated so no badge set off a cumulative pattern. And the standing excuse stayed the same. Keep perishables moving so drivers aren't dumping cargo. The rule held enough truth to defend a shortcut, and the shortcut hid the pass. The 12 Border Patrol agents under investigation didn't smash the process. They paused pieces of it. Secondary down, expedited lanes up, actions timed to maintenance windows. So unscanned trucks blended into routine. The raids took trucks, cash, and a few phones. The thing that mattered most sat on servers. An operating blueprint that told anyone reading it when to slow a system and when to let a truck go. They didn't hide inside freight. They bought time, lanes, and the exception policy, turning gaps in governance into a dependable logistics feature that ran on calendars, not luck. The raids broke trucks and seized cash, but the operating logic survives wherever permits float and scanners can be sidelined without record. Here's where you come in. Demand audit trails for off-hour permits, automated scanner uptime logs, and independent oversight with authority to probe and publish findings. Support credible watchdogs and tell elected officials to protect whistleblowers and reward integrity. Raids crush warehouses. Only verified uptime and public reporting crush the blueprint that keeps corridors open.